Drum roll, please. Hello, happy Saturday. It is Steve and Melissa here from our couch to talk about, well, I titled the video, An Aware Parent is Greater Than a Perfect Parent. Another alternative title for this video was going to be, You Don't Need to Fix Your Kids, You Need to Fix Yourself.
You went the less aggressive one, huh?
Yeah. And really, one of the things I get really excited about is when parents join awareness school and go through awareness school because, one of the things I think most people reflect back on their lives and they kind of wish that they had been parented in a different way. And when I think about the skills and the stuff that we teach and go through in awareness school, like, if only my parents had this skill set, this toolbox, this, self-knowledge, if they understood why they thought and felt and behaved and parented and did the things they did in the ways that they did, how much chiller my life could have been. And so now, obviously we can't go back, but what we can do is kind of spread the word and encourage people to kind of do this undertaking, again, if it's not just for your own personal joy and peace and feeling good more of the time for your own sake, sometimes, and this is actually the case for me. I've shared my story before, how it really was within our relationship dynamic that really made me realize, I need to do something. I really need to go within and figure out why I react the way that I do. Otherwise, I'm going to, lose this really wonderful person in my life because my behavior patterns are not conducive with maintaining harmony. And so a lot of times parents, whether you've got, younger kids who are still in the house or adult children who maybe have distanced themselves from you. And if you are a parent and your adult children have distanced themselves from you and you just go, I don't know why, I have no idea why, there's probably some awareness work that would be very helpful for you to do. And so we wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit, see if any questions come up, and really get you guys excited about awareness school that starts in 10 days. It'll be a Tuesday morning for 10 weeks that we'll be diving deep into, why am I the way that I am?
Yeah. I like couples taking awareness school, and I also like parents. And, the interesting thing about it is somebody might say, why? Well, what business do you have teaching people how to parent or helping people with a parenting issue or whatever? And my personal experience is that a lot of the time when a person's not doing, what's maximally resourceful, what's going to help them create as much of what they want as they can and as little of what they don't want as they can get away with creating, it's not necessarily because they don't know what to do. It's because they spend a lot of time in a mood or in a state of consciousness or immersed in an experience that is kind of not conducive to their recognizing what's most resourceful at a given moment in time and being inclined to do what they recognize as being most resourceful. So for instance, if I'm a parent and I'm perpetually stressed out, some of that might be related to conditions that are kind of inherent and intrinsic to parenting, like, or at least parenting in a certain economic situation or with a certain schedule or whatever. There's a certain amount of stress, that is probably more or less inherent to that life circle, certain phases of parenting, right? Like you're a young child or whatever, a teenager. But at the same time, my personal experience is that almost everybody who's going through a stressful phase of life is also interacting with the aspects of that phase of life that are perpetuating and exacerbating the stress that they're kind of complaining about, right? And they don't know they're doing it, but sort of unconsciously and I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but stressful conditions very often put me in a situation where it's extremely easy for me to interact unresourcefully with aspects of that condition that tends to make the condition even more stressful. So I feel like I'm behind, I feel like I'm not prepared, I feel like I'm stretched thin, I feel like I'm overwhelmed, I feel like I'm unappreciated, I feel like nothing that I do works, I feel like I'm doing everything I can and things are still going wrong. All of those feelings create this sort of really unpleasant pressure inside that sort of cuts me off from my intelligence and my creativity, makes me feel, it's a really kind of pernicious thing happens where I feel like I have to fix it right away and I've got no idea what it is I'm supposed to do, but I have to do something, but I don't know what it is, but I have to do something. So I just do something out of sort of an emotional impulse. Very often that thing gives me feedback I don't want. That makes me frustrated, makes me feel guilty, makes me feel resentful, makes me feel sorry for myself, makes me feel even more hopeless. And then that generates the next response, which then kind of gives me even more of sort of what I don't want. And what Awareness School really allows people to do is take conscious control of a lot of the unconscious and automatic activity that's going on in their head that is causing or contributing to what we call what it's like to be them. So if you're the parent of a difficult child, or if you're the parent of a child that's going through a difficult time, right? There's a certain experience that's sort of intrinsic to that. There's things are this way, I'd like for them to be this way. My child feels this way, I wish that they felt that way. My child's doing this, I wish they were doing that instead. But there's also a lot of internal stuff that you may be doing that is doing a couple things. One, making your experience worse than it needs to be. Two, putting strain on the relationship with you and your child. And three, indirectly and inadvertently feeding into the child doing more of the things that you don't want them to be doing as a response to just sort of the energy and the relationship that exists between you. And when you as an individual, there are certain really basic things that a person can do, skills that they can master, that will allow them to consciously and intentionally direct their mind in ways that tend to be useful regardless of the stuff that they happen to be dealing with. I'm 23 and I fight with my partner all the time. I'm 37 and I have a small child and that child's difficult to get along with, or I feel like I'm not doing a good enough job, or I see myself doing things with regard to the child that my mother did when I was young and I am terrified by that, but I don't know how to do anything different. Those are all very different circumstances. Those are different situations, but there are high-level, pattern-level skills that a person can master that will allow them to begin to navigate those situations in ways that are useful, in ways that allow you to become very clear on what it is that you want, and very clear on what you're doing that is helping you to get that, what you're doing that is interfering with your ability to get it, what you're doing that may be causing you to create what you do not want, and that also gives you the ability to assess that stuff without justifying it, without blaming yourself for it, without feeling guilty, without feeling overwhelmed, without feeling stressed, without feeling like it's just another thing for you to feel bad about failing at. It'll allow you just to assess the situation and go, there's an opportunity here for me to make a sustainable modification in how I'm interacting with my life and with what has my attention that might help me get more of what I want and less of what I don't. And so you as a person, and this is that thing, if you want to be a better parent, you have to get better at being a person. You have to get better at being an individual. You have to learn how to handle this very potentially dangerous thing called a mind that does all this stuff, sometimes without you even asking it to. You have to get really good at managing your experience. There are little things that you can do with your mind that will make you feel better or worse in any given situation. And if you have sort of unconscious and automatic settings, and most people do, I have for most of my life, I still to some extent do, even to this day, if I don't watch it, it's going to be very difficult for me to create as much of what I'm capable of creating that I want in my relationship with my children if I have, let's say, patterns of internal dialogue that are running in my head that make me feel like crap. Or that make me catastrophize things that aren't necessarily that big of a deal. Or if my child, let's say, throws a tantrum and something inside my mind, not even me, but there's like something in there, this automatic thing, makes the fact that my child is throwing a tantrum mean that I'm failing as a parent. There's an experience that comes with that meaning assignment. It's bad. And usually that unpleasant experience is going to generate behaviors towards the child, right, that are going to perpetuate and exacerbate the child's undesirable behavior, which will feed back in, and my automatic meaning assignment will then say, oh my God, I'm even more of a bad parent. Let me try even harder to apply what didn't work last time to see if I can force this change. Then you get miserable, they're miserable, the house is miserable, the energy is of just a morass of unpleasantness. Everybody's stressed, everything's terrible, we're in the existential red, things are bad and getting worse. How do you get out of that? And you have to stop being a parent. I don't mean drop them off at the orphanage. I mean, you have to just let yourself be a person and say, geez, I'm dealing with a difficult situation here. Let me take inventory of the experiences that I go throughout the day. I'm a mother. I wake up. The first thing I feel is behind. I then feel stressed. I then resent my husband. I then interact with my children. The children don't respond to me the way I want to. That makes me feel like I'm a failure as a mother. I get frustrated. I get angry at my children. I see myself getting angry at my children. I say, oh my God, I'm just like my mom. That makes me feel even worse. Then I feel tired and depressed. Then I get myself out of being tired and depressed, and I force myself to be productive, and I think maybe things will be okay. Then somebody tracks some mud in the house. Then my husband comes home and sits on the couch. Then I feel like I can't do it, like I'm all alone. So I feel isolated. Then I feel resentful. Then I get angry. Then I feel bad about getting... And if you can watch yourself go through that whole process, you'll begin to recognize that there are little things that you're doing mentally. It doesn't mean it's your fault, but there are little things that you're doing in your mind that are not necessary and probably not helpful, right? There are unresourceful certainties that you may have about what the fact that you're dealing with what you're currently dealing with means to you, for you, about what's possible, about what kind of a person you are, about what your value is, about what your future is going to be, about all sorts of things, right? And it's amazing. If you just remove that unresourceful certainty from your day, you go through it, and instead of going, this means I'm a bad mother, you even just go, this might mean I'm a bad mother, right? There's an implication there that says might not. Or you start paying attention to something different. Instead of just paying attention to how angry you got at your kids, you notice the fact that you're concerned about the fact that you sometimes get angry with your children and that you're interested in learning to do something different. Mm-hmm. And you make that mean, gosh, I guess I'm at least interested in doing better. That's got to be significant. That's got to be important. That's light. That's enlightening. That's brightening. That gives you hope. It creates a different quality experience. That different quality experience is more likely to generate resourceful behaviors that are more likely to elicit from your environment, your children, your spouse, whatever. Your unconscious mind is kind of your environment sometimes. Elicit responses that will then be conducive to even more productive kind of things from you, things that work. Really, it's about taking sort of downward spirals or sort of mediocre kind of lateral movement and turning those things into upward spirals. And a lot of that has to do with becoming consciously creative in how you use your mind, not being passive, not just accepting the first thing that your mind throws out to you. This means you're a bad person. This means you're behind. This means you're failing as a parent. This means they're upset with you. That means you must have done something wrong. That means you must be bad. All this different stuff. Like a lot of people have a really hard time if their adult children don't want to talk to them. They make that mean, okay, if the child is justified in not wanting to talk to me, that must mean I'm a bad person. I did a bad job as a parent. Now, if that's what that means, that might not be psychologically viable for me. It would say, I can't bear the emotional burden of considering that I may have been a terrible parent. Therefore, I have to make illegitimate the fact that they don't want to talk to me. So I don't accept the fact that that's how they feel right now, because I can't accept they're feeling that way without saying they're justified and feel that way. And I can't say they're justified in feeling that way without condemning myself in ways I'm not emotionally prepared to handle. And so I'm stuck in a situation where I have to take on an emotional burden that I can't bear, or refuse to accept my child's right to feel the way that they do about me or about our relationship, or just not want to talk to me for now. So I'm stuck in this double bind situation. If I have the ability to recognize they feel the way that they do and they have the right to feel that way without making it mean negative things about me that I can't emotionally handle making it mean, all of a sudden there's this new vista of options that opens up to me in terms of allowing them to be as they are, doing what they're doing, without having to, on the other hand, condemn myself in some way, because if they're justified, that must mean I'm bad. There must be something wrong with somebody. Who is it? Well, it can't be me, it's got to be them. Or it can't be them, they're wonderful, so it must be me. When you have the option just to go, here's what's happening, let me just withhold meaning assignment and judgment from this whole thing, it becomes possible to sort of honor and respect them. And that doesn't like cheesy stuff. All that means is that you do not actively interfere in an overbearing and disrespectful way in their right to feel as they do at a given moment in time. That's all that means, right? And when you have the ability to do that, it changes the energy dynamic that exists between you and that child. You feel better. If you want to unlock new behaviors, you have to unlock new feelings. That could be we could just say 15 minutes, right? And really, unlocking new feelings means learning how to do different things with your mind when you're confronted with the same old stuff from the outside. Yes. So we want new results, we need behaviors. If we want new behaviors, we need new feelings. If we want to access new feelings, we have to learn how to respond mentally to the stuff that is going on in our environment in ways that are different than we normally do. That's pretty much what Awareness School teaches you how to do.
This person says, I've done a lot of awareness work now. I'm interested as a parent of adult children in how relational healing occurs or is facilitated.
The first thing that I would do is I would consider the possibility that everything about the dynamics that exist between you and your child makes sense. Given what happened, given what didn't happen, right? And I would also then consider, so that's the responsibility side. That's the sharp kind of, it's not hurtful, but that's the heavy side of things, if there is a heavy side. And then the other thing I would say is everything that didn't happen, right? As the children were being raised, and as they were growing up, the fact that all that stuff didn't happen in the ways that it didn't happen makes perfect sense. Everyone's always doing the best they can given the resources that are available to them at the time. If you could have done better, or if you would have known better, you probably would have interacted with your children in different ways. That doesn't need to be anything wrong with what you did in order for that to be true. Everybody's always doing about as well as they can given the resources that are available to them at the time. Now, this is an interesting thing. I'm aware of that, and so I don't have to blame myself for what did and didn't happen when I was raising them. But at the same time now, as a result of the ways in which they were raised, my children are doing the best that they can given the resources that are available to them at the present moment in time. They may not at this time have the resources necessary to, let's say, form a perception of their personal history and their experiences with you that makes it possible for them to want to relate to you in the way that you want to relate with them. And I think letting that be emotionally okay is super important. And I think, there's this thing that can happen, and I can totally imagine and understand how it would happen, where the parent says, listen, I messed up, but I really need us to get back on track. And what happens is my need to reestablish a relationship begins to override the priority that I place upon respecting the fact that our relationship is as it is as a result of what has happened up until this point. The child can feel that, and very often they will respond to it, right? Because the mother understandably has this desperate need to sort of reconcile with the child, or turn over a new leaf, or turn to a new page, a new chapter, or whatever. But if check my priority list, and if my priority list is reestablishing the relationship, if that sits above respecting the fact that at this moment in time they may not be prepared for that, or they may be skeptical or reserved about that, or whatever, they're going to respond to that energy probably in ways that I'm not going to like. And how do you recalibrate that values kind of hierarchy, that priority list? And I think it is figuring out, building yourself a model that allows you to understand that they feel the way they do, why they feel that way, that doesn't require you to be the bad guy, or doesn't require you to feel guilty, and doesn't activate within you beliefs that go, oh my God, well, this means we're never going to be able to come together again. You have to have the freedom to fully respect how they feel without having little beliefs and meaning assignment in your head that makes how they feel cause you to feel absolutely terrible. Because there is this, if reconciliation is higher on my priority list than respecting their right to estrangement, they may not be estranged, but relative estrangement, whatever, they're going to feel that and they're not going to like that. And it's going to be very difficult for them to be as receptive as maybe you would like for them to be. But when you get to the place where you go, listen, you get to be exactly how you are, you get to feel exactly how you do, I would very much like to reestablish a relationship with you, but I recognize that you may not want that right now. You may not ever want that. That's a reality for some people. I don't know your situation, but for some people, the kids, they may never, and it's not until I say my main priority is doing right by my children now, and doing right by my children now means extending to them full permission, full respect, full acknowledgement of their right to feel the way that they do. And my hope is that I can do that and have the kind of relationship with them that I would like to. But if that's not possible, the main thing I want to do is to acknowledge in everything about how I think, feel, and act with regard to my children, their right to feel the way that they do, want what they want, and act upon what they think is best for them. That is a wonderfully open and inviting energy that people typically respond really well to. Now, they can tell if it's a front, and they can tell if it's kind of a white knuckle thing. The goal is to completely lose yourself in this new and open and respectful relationship to your children, to your idea of your children, to that relationship with them. It's getting to the place where there are things that are more important to you than having the kind of relationship with your children that you think that you need to have in order to be okay. I want them to be okay. I want them to be empowered. I want to be able to respect their decisions. I want to really do right by my children as they are right now. I don't want to kind of force mold my children into who they would have been had I been different when I was raising them, and then have that kind of relationship, because there is this tendency to inadvertently steamroll and to inadvertently disrespect and ignore and overlook the reality of who your children currently are, because so much of the way the relationship exists now, you kind of attribute to things that went wrong when you were raising them, and you see that now. but now you want the situation to not be what it is as a result of the fact that those things happen. But they're saying, listen, it's great you see it now, but the fact is things happen the way that they did and I feel the way that I do. And that's kind of a big ask for a parent, I think, to both recognize what went wrong or what could have been different or whatever, without also trying to force changes in the way things currently are. But when you can get both of those things going at one time, you really do unlock a lot of opportunities. This has been my personal experience in working with people kind of on both ends of this, working with parents and working with children. And it's that they are testing you and they are seeing whether or not you're really going to put their interests first. And that means I want them well, I want them happy, I want them empowered, I want them respected, regardless of whether that means I'm in their life or not. And when you reach that point, when you equip yourself with the ideas that allows you to have an experience that makes it possible for you to prioritize them in that way, they feel that respect, they feel that openness, they feel the optionality, they feel the non-manipulation, and very often they're pretty responsive to it.
Totally. And like, this kind of comes to your relationship with all of your desires, anything in your life that you wish was different than it is. Are you withholding, like, I can't be okay unless this relationship is okay. I can't feel okay unless I get the thing that I want. So, whether it's I want a relationship with my children, I want, a life partner, I want, this thing to happen. And if I withhold my okayness, and if I say I can't be okay unless this thing happens, you are kind of holding that dynamic hostage. And the universe, the energies that it doesn't reward this kind of grasping desperation, demanding. I kind of am demanding that we become okay. I'm demanding that I get this thing, and I just won't feel okay. I won't be at peace. I won't be totally joyful until I get this thing. And so a concept that we cover in awareness school that comes up is about like preferences versus prerequisites. And like, a prerequisite is like, I need this in order to feel okay. I must have this relationship reconciled. You must forgive me. You must, we must have a blank slate and start over in order for me to feel okay. And I'm just kind of waiting and watching and saying, see, I'm good now. I'm different now. Can't you see I'm different now? Like, versus, a preference is like, I would prefer it for us to be cool and for us to be able to spend time together and have a wonderful family dynamic. I'd prefer that, but I don't need it. I'm not desperate for this thing to be this way in order for me to be okay. Like, truly, the best thing that you can give your children, your spouse, your business, everything is like this inner feeling of okayness, this sustained, fulfilled, I know where my value is coming from, and it's self-sourced. It's not externally sourced. I'm not waiting on something outside me to give me that feedback. And that's where, most of us, if we didn't get what we needed early on from our family, we feel this kind of desperation. We people please, or we, play games in order to kind of get the strokes and the inner fulfillment to make us feel okay. And so we're constantly, desperately outsourcing our okayness to the world around us. And really the trick is, and one of the tools, one of the many things that you're going to learn is how to self-source it, how to get it from the inside, so that regardless of how everybody's doing on the outside and the feedback that you're receiving from the people around you, it's coming from you. And this is also really wonderful, again, if you're a parent of children, and those children, what if they're expressing symptoms because of conflicts they clearly have going on, and you're like, okay, what kind of conflict could this kid be having? And you have to look in the mirror and you have to look at the dynamics. And again, without guilt, without self-judgment, just this is what I'm working with. The dynamics and my unconscious patterns that I picked up from my parents, that they picked up from their parents. So it's not about blame and guilt and shame and who's responsible. It's simply, here we find ourselves. My child is expressing maybe a symptom because, they are picking up on, my desire for separation, my self-devaluation, and they've made it their own. Now they're having their own experience of that. I've got to be able to pump the brakes and teach them. I can't get in their head and fix them. All I can do is begin to radiate and model self-sourced okayness. How do I model self-sourced okayness for my child so that they can start feeling, this sense of okayness. Instead of everybody looking to everybody else to be like, okay, am I okay now? Am I okay? Am I good? You need to act, you need to change, you need to heal in order for me to feel that I'm okay. And if everybody's secretly doing that to one another, that mom can't feel okay until she's reestablished a relationship with her adult children, and we can't feel okay until we start getting this external feedback, that's kind of the basis of this problem. Is looking to the outside instead of rearranging your mental household, taking care of all that's going on in here, and then, letting other people pick up on it, get curious about it. A lot of times people will even start kind of learning this stuff and be like, oh, I need my kids to get into this. I need to teach them. I need to show them. And it's like, you can't do that. You just need to exude it. You just need to overflow with this kind of calm, chill, okay, I'm okay, you're okay, everybody's doing what makes sense, you're on your path, I'm detached from it, you're doing weird stuff that I don't understand, I trust that, whatever you need to experience in this lifetime, you're going to, and yes, I played a role in it, but I'm no longer attached to the identity of having been a person who traumatized my children inadvertently. It's like, we can all just breathe that sigh of relief, and they can tell, even if they're across the country from you, they can tell there's a feeling of detached okayness of I no longer am looking to you and your, results in your life to determine whether or not I'm an okay person. And that's freedom. That's freedom for the parent. That's freedom for the child. And again, if somebody in our family lines would have done this for themselves, we would have started a whole new trajectory. And so it's a cool opportunity that you have to wake up to this crap. That's the thing, is every time I see something that I do inside my mind to make me miserable, to contribute to ongoing suffering is just a habit. You grew up in an environment of suffering. We all assumed, because of the amount of suffering and misery and stress and troubles that our parents had, that just, it calibrated our expectations for what life is. It's just like. And so we unconsciously attract and create and perpetuate patterns of misery and suffering. And when you wake up to how you're doing that and you see it for what it is, you then have a choice. Before that, you just have no choice. Stuff happens. It is what it is. This is just the way life is. And we think that we're kind of destined to, experience this suffering. But when you start questioning it, and that's really what all this work is about, questioning, observation, curiosity, and you wake up and you wake up and you wake up and things start to rearrange.
Yeah. And it's not about the way we approach it is not, oh, you're doing it wrong and we're going to show you how to do it right. That is a wrong understanding of how any of this stuff works. It's less about what's right and more about what's resourceful. The reason that your life, my life, anybody's life is the way that it is. It's not that there's a sheet of right things to do and you did things that weren't on that sheet and didn't do things that were on the sheet, and now you're being punished, now you're failing the test. That's not how it works. Reality is an impossible situation. Existing is a bizarre, strange, weird thing. Parenting is probably one of the weirdest things about this, that you create a person and process and form a relationship with them when they can't walk or talk or do anything, and then they start learning how to walk and talk, and you got other stuff going on while you got them going on, and one day you were grouchy when they tried to do something, and so you raised your voice, and now they hate you forever. I mean, whatever mistakes you've made as a parent, it's not a fair situation for you, right? And so understanding that, I think, is very important, because until you can be fair with yourself, it's going to be very hard to be fair with other people. And recognizing that it's not about what's right that you didn't do or what's wrong that you did do. It's about what resourceful thing could you be doing now if you were relaxed and calm and secure enough to recognize it and do that thing. It's a little like jujitsu. I don't know that there are right and wrong things to do in jujitsu. It's like, hey, if somebody comes up and grabs your collar like this, here's something that will help. If someone gets you in an arm bar, if someone gets you in a chokehold, here's something that might help you get out of it. And life circumstances, experiences, feelings, beliefs, patterns of thinking, they get you in a chokehold, right? And a lot of what we're showing you is how to get out of that. How to get out of I've got a structure of thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and external reality, right? I've got negative thinking, I've got a lot of bad feelings, I have certain unconscious, automatic, habitual behaviors, and I've got a lot of external situations and circumstances with myself, my finances, my physical body, my relationship with my partner, my kids, what they're up to, and a lot of that stuff seems to be conspiring against me and causing me to have not a good time, and also to do things that create results I don't want. And we're not going to say, well, tut, here's what you did wrong, and here, if you do this right, then everything will be okay. And, tough shit, if it's hard, it's your fault that it's the way it is. It's not like that. It's, someone's got you in a gnarly chokehold here. Let's see if we can begin to get you out. And then it either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, well, then we try something else. But until you begin to embody that attitude with regard to this stuff, it's really hard to be as flexible and as free as you have to be in order to have a chance of accessing the resourceful responses that will allow you to begin to evoke from what can be, the version of possibility that you would really like to see made manifest in your life. And if you don't have that basic attitude towards dealing with what you're dealing with, it's really super hard to find your way into those patterns of resourceful response that really actually work. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody, something pretty annoying sometimes. There are people who just seem to find it effortless to do the right thing, to do the effective thing, to behave in ways that serve them. And you see that and you're just kind of like, God, it just seems so easy for them, And it can be easy for you too when you kind of recalibrate. They have different assumptions. They've got different patterns of meaning assignment. They're not dealing with all the same feelings that you're dealing with. And if they are, they're dealing with those feelings differently. They have an idea that you don't have access to that allows them to make sense out of not lashing out. Or they don't have some idea that you are operating under the burdensome influence of that makes it so that you have to freak out at a certain point. It makes it so that it just fulfills your criteria for having an outburst or for giving up or for feeling, just let down and hopeless or whatever. And when you have access to a bunch of stuff that serves you, and when you're free from the burdensome influence of a whole bunch of beliefs and assumptions and ideas and automatic reactions that don't serve you, you'd be very surprised at what you're capable of creating. And something that you said earlier about it's not good to be desperate for the changes that you want. And that's definitely true. At the same time, though, if you are desperate and you don't know how not to be, that's work withable. We can show you how to deal with that. And one of the first things that I have found very useful is to not make my desperation the other person's problem or responsibility. And a lot of the time, this is unconscious and unspoken and subtly communicated. I'm so hurt that my children won't talk to me. So if they don't talk to me, I'm going to kind of lay upon them some unarticulated, ambiguous amount of responsibility for the fact that I'm over here hurting so bad. And I think if they just know how badly I'm hurting, then they'll change. But they actually sometimes will resent that. That's an inadvertently manipulative effort on the part of the parent sometimes, right? To let me, I want you to know how upset I am in the hopes that knowledge will sort of coerce you into changing your behavior. Versus if you say, listen, I am desperate for a relationship with my children because I have a biological connection to them, I have history with them. There are things that I know about why I did what I did, and there are sort of intense wishes that I had done differently. They don't know everything that went into me doing it. I see it. I wish it had been different. I wish things had happened differently earlier in my life. It's very hard sometimes to sit on all that stuff, that knowledge yourself, and not try to force your kids to understand it too, because if only they knew what you knew, then they would feel differently about you, and that's probably true, but they're never going to know that stuff. All they're going to know is what you're communicating to them now, how much you are or are not respecting their right to feel about you the way that they do now. That's what they're responding to. And sometimes if there's something that I feel about you or something that happened between us, right? Let's say we're on the outs, we're estranged from each other, right? And I did something I shouldn't have done. And I know inside something about why I did what I did and how what I did is not a reflection of how I feel about you or who I want to be or what the future is going to be. And my number one priority is not respecting the fact that you feel the way that you do. My number one priority is cramming, shoehorning, forcing in. You must understand what I understand about what I did. That's the main thing. You're not going to be responding to that understanding. You're going to be responding to my disrespectful, overbearing attempts to force you to understand. And then I'll be very confused because I'll say, I knew. You have to step back and you have to say, listen, it's their right to accept or not accept. They may need a cooling off period. What if you woke up every day and your number one thing is, I want my children to be free? That's my main priority. I don't want them to be like me. I don't want them to like me. I want them to be free. Now, if I would like for my children to like me, but I would rather my children dislike me and be free than like me and be constrained, like me and have attenuated freedom or diminished capacity to be a human being who can do what they want to do. It's when you become a parent who prioritizes your children's freedom, and by freedom I mean the ability to consciously and intentionally exercise choice at all of the levels of their life that are experientially relevant. Choice with regard to what they think. Choice with regard to how they respond to having just had a thought that was perhaps negative. Choice with regard to how they feel. Choice with regard to how they respond to the feeling. Suppress it, express it, resist it, let it be okay, work on moving it in the right direction, right? Choice with regard to what they do, don't do, and how they go about doing those things, right? Choice with regard to the relationships that they form. When you have that attitude towards your children, have you never felt repelled by somebody? That just the thought of them, and it's not even that you dislike them or that you wish ill on them or that you maybe even want to like them. Maybe they're a family member that you had a good sort of history with, but at some point something started to change and they just drained you, or you just felt so heavy after you interacted with them. A lot of the time that stuff comes from that person's having a need for you to do certain things relative to them that is more important to them than that you have a good time, than that you do what's right for you. And it becomes really hard for you to enjoy being around a person like that as much as you otherwise would. Whereas if you can just make it so that what I really want is for them to be happy. And if possible, I would like for, in the context of them being happy, for us to form a really nice relationship together. And I don't really even care what that relationship looks like. I don't care that, and because a lot of people say, all I want to do is have a good relationship with my kids, but they have a little thing tacked on the bottom of it, and that means that they change their views about this, they change their behaviors in this way, they change their understanding of what happened in the past, they feel differently about what I did. You know what I mean? That they come to the same conclusions about why the past was the way that it was that I did. And if I'm burdened by that, right, my number one priority is not having a good relationship with my children. I want to have a good relationship with a version of my children that does not exist, that I think should exist, which is a version of my children who has the same version of our personal history that I do. And I want to be aware of the fact that that is my real priority list. Because, I mean, it's fine. It's not that it's bad. But if I think my number one priority is having a relationship with my kids, and the real thing is I want to have a relationship with the version of my kids that exists in my head, or the version of my kids that I think should exist, or the version of my kids that I think would exist if they saw things the way that I did, those are different priorities. And I'll create a lot of suffering if I think I'm going for A when I'm actually going for B. If I know I'm going for B, I can either just know what I'm doing, or I can go, you know what, all this time I thought I was aiming for A. I really wasn't. I was actually aiming for B. And then you start aiming for A, and then all of a sudden you start getting it. You start getting more kind of what you want. But again, I think, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this, most of the issues that arise between parents and children are not due to parenting issues. They're not due to parenting issue. They're due to personal issues. I, as an individual, do not know how to responsibly manage and maintain and direct my mind. And as a result of that, I have a million unnecessary, unpleasant feelings throughout the day. I am burdened by 1,000 unresourceful ideas about myself, the world, and other people, right? That manifests as all kinds of little behaviors here, there, and everywhere, and as I interact with other people. That's the issue. Most people don't know how to operate their mind in a way that doesn't feel bad. Most people don't know how to operate their mind in a way that pushes them in directions that they actually want to go. Most people don't know how to perceive and experience events in opportunistically resourceful ways. Most people don't have the capacity to step back and go, oh, something unexpected and not desired happened. We have a choice about how we're going to perceive, experience, relate, and respond to this. And some of the ways that we can do, perceive, experience, relate, and respond to this are going to make our life better, and some are going to make our life worse. Most people don't have the ability to step back and consciously choose. Their mind just kind of bleh out something, and they just have to go with it. They have to go with that interpretation. They have to go with that belief. They have to go with that meaning assignment. They have to just ride the wave of experience that comes with whatever their unconscious mind serves out to them as a result of what it was they grew up doing, right? And their relationship with their children occurs through their relationship that they have with themselves.
Yes.
She can't admit that she's wrong. He can't let it go. Yet if you listen to the complaints that grown children have about their parents, right? It's stuff like that. They say that they want to have a relationship with me, but every time we start talking, they always bring up this, or they focus on the negative thing, or they always ask these questions that communicate disapproval of what I'm doing, right? And the parent really does want to have a relationship with the child, but it's like you're in prison, and there's a big, thick slab of glass between you and your child, right? And the prison is your unconscious programming. That big, thick slab of glass are your patterns of interacting with them. I have watched parents say, all I want to do is just get along with my child. And then finally the child agrees to come sit down with them. They sit down together and they start talking. Within 5 minutes, that parent starts nitpicking, looking for what's wrong, critiquing what you didn't do, what you could have done different, invalidating the child's version or experience of events, asking little needling, wheedling questions, trying to get the child to doubt themselves in the way that the parent tends to doubt themselves, and they don't even know they're doing it. They don't even know they're doing it because they don't have the capacity to step back and go. And there's this other big thing is, I'm your mother, you're my child, I'm your father, you're my child. And sometimes what happens is we get so locked into those roles that we overlook the reality that what we have here is person A and person B. And if person A consistently behaves and communicates with person B in a way that makes person B feel bad, if person B has any sense whatsoever, person B is going to avoid interacting with person A, regardless of the role that person A plays in their life, mother, father, boss, aunt, uncle, whoever, it doesn't matter. And if I'm so fixated on the fact that I'm your father, and you're supposed to love me, and we need to have a good relationship because if we don't, I got to feel bad, I'm overlooking the reality that this isn't a father-son, father-daughter interaction. This is a person-to-person interaction as well. And a lot of that person-to-person interaction is I'm missing a lot of opportunities to make it positive. And I'm falling into a lot of traps to make it negative, to make it unpleasant. If people come away from their interactions with you feeling good, they will generally want to interact with you more. And if they come away from their interactions with you feeling worse, feeling drained, feeling tired, feeling guilty, feeling burdened, feeling less certain of themselves, less sure of themselves, if they come away feeling nervous, if they come away feeling insecure, if they come away feeling just unapproved of, if they come away feeling disapproved of, if they come away feeling invalidated, if they come away feeling disrespected, they're not going to want to interact with you that much. And a lot of people have this sense of entitlement inside that goes, because I changed your diapers, you should want to interact with me even if you feel like shit after you do it. And it just isn't going to happen. And if I, as a person, can reach that level of awareness where I'm assessing the situation, that's empathy. I'm saying to myself, if I were my daughter, would I want to interact with me? And I don't know about people who are watching, because I don't know who you are, right? But a lot of people in this world, if they ask that question sincerely and they answer it honestly, the answer is hell no. I wouldn't want to interact with me if I were my daughter. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because when the two of you get together, the interactions are conducive to downward spiral, unpleasant negativity. And it's not 100% you. It's not. Because you probably taught them how to interact with you in ways that aren't useful too, right? And someone probably taught you how to do that. The issue and the question is not who's to blame, because blame is retroactive. We're looking into the past to feel bad. The issue is responsibility. Responsibility is about option. Responsibility is proactive. Responsibility is looking to the future and spiraling up into what's possible. What might I be able to do differently? And another thing too is stop trying to have a relationship with your kids and start trying to have a relationship with the human beings, the individuals, the people that your children are. Because if I want to have a relationship with my kids, I say, look here, daughter, you need to da-da-da-da, and it's loaded with all these expectations. But if I can give myself the freedom to have a genuine interest and curiosity about the human being that my children have become, sometimes that opens up doors that would otherwise be locked. And that's not a hard thing to do, but it's something that's very easy to never get to. It's something that just doesn't occur to a lot of people. Sometimes people don't ever get to being a good, nice, decent, pleasant person, not because they don't have the capacity to be those things, but because they've got to run through like 50 programs of being unpleasant, being not so decent, being curmudgeon-y, being sort of judgmental, being unpleasant, and they've got so much unconscious crap that they have to run through that person's long gone by the time they ever get to actually be a spontaneous, real decent person. And awareness is about cleaning out all that stuff so that you don't have to judge your child in a way that interferes with your ability to interact resourcefully with the reality of the way that they are. It's that you and they begin to interact with each other in an adult to adult capacity. Even if they're young, if they're young children, you're certainly going to have a parental role in their life, but you still want the ability to interact in a sort of game-free, above-board, pure adult-to-adult, person-to-person, individual-to-individual way. Children feel that, don't they? I remember, when I was a kid, and when an adult would have a real honest-to-goodness, transparent, authentic, no bullshit conversation with me, and my whole brain lit up, and I was kind of like, wow, I feel like this is real. I feel like you're leveling with me. I feel like this is true. And I didn't resent them for not being perfect. I felt such relief because I wasn't witnessing a performance. I was having a real actual human interaction. So there's all sorts of wonderful possibilities that open up when you get to be who you are.
Totally. How do you change this with the mind that created it? Well, you don't. You watch it. And that's like, you've heard us mention the automatic mind. All of this work is about learning, systematizing your self-observation and being able to zoom out from these patterned interactions and to realize, oh, I'm running a program. Oh, I'm running a script. Oh, I'm not being a real human. Oh, I'm being a robot. Because that's most of our interactions. They're not conscious and intentional interactions. Like, pay attention to the number of just kind of automatic things. Like, that's when my world really started to change, when I started to question my spontaneous reactions to life. And it felt like, oh, well, I thought that was authenticity. I thought that I was just being honest and authentic when I just, responded however I responded. And I thought that, to question that, what do you mean I'm going to question my authenticity? But no, I had to start seeing that was downloaded programming for consistent, unpleasant interactions with my life partner. And I didn't realize that I was programmed in that way because of the, what I observed growing up. So I had to get curious about it and I had to watch it, because you can't change from within it. When you're within it, you can't see anything but being in the pattern, and you feel justified and you feel, like what you're doing is true and right. And I used to think that there's no other way that I could feel about blank situation. It's like, anyone. I would even go through little things in my head where it's like, if I asked 100 people if this is justified to making me feel this way, I felt like, yeah, those 100 people would totally agree that what you did, you put the towels on the floor and you shouldn't have done that. That's an old one. And I felt mad, and I got pissy, and I reacted in a way that I felt was totally justified, that I had no other choice. But through observation and 3-hour-long conversations of breaking this down, I was able to see, oh, there's more than one way to look at this. There's more than one way to feel about this. And so that's really what the work of Awareness School is waking up to, because you can't fix it from inside of it. Inside of it, you're just justified, and it's sticky and it's heavy. We have to create this lightness, and that's a skill.
Yeah. I would say too that the in general, what I am doing is not necessarily an indication of all that I'm capable of doing. It's not an indication of what I'm capable of doing instead. There is a there when it comes to what you're kind of pointing to or getting at with your question, which is very often exactly what you're, I think, kind of indicating or referring to is what happens when people try to change this stuff. They try to change the pattern from within the pattern, and the result of the change effort is a perpetuation and exacerbation of sameness. And a lot of what awareness for me consists of is the ability just to float back and watch with a level of detached. Actually, I came up with a little sequence of words that I liked. It was just this morning, and it's an intense curiosity with regard to process and a profound indifference with regard to outcome. Because the need to control the outcome, the need to modify the behavior, the need to force a change very often sucks me in. It's a high-stakes situation, and what do I do in a high-stakes situation? I do what I know. Well, what I know doesn't work. What I know very often creates what I don't want. And so I want to be profoundly detached with regard to the outcome of this particular conversation. I don't want to be so hung up on you understanding and agreeing with what I'm saying. I want to be very interested in simply observing what's happening. I don't know what's going to happen, but I want to watch, however, I want to watch the manner in which whatever happens so that I can learn something about the structure and the process that's associated with it. Because if I understand exactly how I go about interacting with my child in an unproductive way, my partner in an unproductive way, myself in an unproductive way, I'll know a lot about the opportunities that exist for me to intervene in that process. Once I know enough about it, I have observed it, I also recognize it for what it is. And that's a really important thing, because I saw myself get angry a lot. I witnessed myself feel sort of rage emotions and frustration and stuff a lot. And something inside me a lot of the time would go, yeah, so what? You see, you're angry. You're still angry. And I get even more angry because I'm like, this is stupid, But what happened was, after a while, I kind of just persevered through that process. And that just means I didn't quit. It's not like, I don't want to keep doing that. I just kept looking. And eventually I started to see that anger and recognize it for what it was. This is a kinesthetic sensation that I systematically work my way up to as a means of overriding my knowledge and awareness and understanding that the thing I'm about to do isn't going to work and is going to actually work against me. Get myself so in such an emotionally intense state that I am indifferent to you, indifferent to myself, indifferent to what I want and don't want. That ceases. Done. So I started to recognize not just the anger, but recognize the anger for what it was, and recognize the impulse to give into it, to give over to it for what it was. And that I would say transformed the system that was me, the observation of it, and the learning to not only see myself, but to recognize certain aspects of myself for what those things were. This is how I go about creating that outcome that I don't want. I'm digging the hole that I'm going to have to claw out of next time. That's what this is. But I don't care. Okay, well, how do I go about becoming indifferent to myself? How did I work myself up into a state of not caring? Because I don't always not care, right? And so, how can the mind change it? It's kind of like, well, the mind that sits can also stand. The mind that sleeps can also wake. The mind that says yes can also be persuaded to say no. It's possible to do a whole bunch of different things. And it is possible to sort of nudge yourself in the direction of doing more of what you want to do. It's, in my experience, persistent and patient engagement and playing a long game, sort of like playing the stock market. A lot of the times what people do is if they are aware enough to know what's going on, they get so freaked out by what's going on or so provoked by what's going on inside their mind, that they get real kind of, I gotta stop this, oh my God, this is me, I can't be the, and that's emotional resistance, which really it raises the stakes, and that short circuits the awareness process, and it pushes you towards the emotional threshold at which you unconsciously default into the very unconscious program that you had just been observing in an effort to change. So it's a little subtle, and if you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, if you haven't kind of like been through this process so that you have some, what we call it, personal experiential reference points, it's a little bit like me describing some fern in great detail when you've never actually seen it in the wild. And so a lot of what Awareness School is about is we present these sort of conceptual models and then give you little exercises or guide you through specific issues that you're dealing with in your life so that I can have intellectual understanding, a little bit of experiential awareness. And then those things can begin to kind of play off of each other. If you're, it's kind of like a seesaw. You want two people that are weighing about the same and kicking about as hard. And if you've got huge amounts of intellectual understanding and very little experiential awareness, it's no fun. So sometimes here people, I think, can get a little overloaded with stuff.
I love all of this. Where does guidance and correction or teaching come in with small children? Do I just need to make sure I'm doing it from a place of okayness? That would certainly help. I think that, when you are, modeling and, teaching a child, so many of our unconscious patterns do come from, discipline and, oh, this is wrong and bad and, or trying to make a child feel guilty. And people just do that. They're not aware that this is coming from, oh, that hurts my feelings, or you're responsible for my feelings. And we send those messages of the child being responsible for our feelings rather than, again, coming from a place of okayness and even resourcefulness. Like I would really talk to my child in terms of resourcefulness, not, oh, that's bad and you hurt me or you hurt them. And, do you want them to hurt you like this? Again, that's coming from this deficit place, this learning, teaching them unconsciously to people please. So we come from this place of complete okayness and look at, is this maximally resourceful? Is this conducive to you getting more to do this? If you want to, go to the park, this needs to be completed in the home. It's resourceful for you to do this. And it's unresourceful if you fail to do this and you don't get to go to the park. You get less of what you want if you don't comply. I'm okay, you're okay. Everybody's ultimately okay here, rather than playing that game of mommy's not okay and you're not okay. We just have to notice, is this coming from a place of complete okayness? Am I teaching in a way that is conducive to, again, them getting more of what they want and me getting more of what I want, and making it a win-win, and assuming that it's possible for because I think another unconscious assumption a lot of people have about parenting is it's going to be a win-lose. Is that, kids, this idea, they're inherently a burden or inherently it's going to be a problem. problem, or inherently I'm going to have to sacrifice myself for them. And it's like, is that actually true? Can I question those unconscious assumptions that I have, that society might have about parenting? What if this is a win-win? What if there's a way for us to both get what we want in this situation? How resourceful can we be as a team? You know, we're doing this parent-child thing for like 18 years. It's like, let's do it in a way where minimum, until and I just want to give you skills that are going to help you to navigate in the world. Because really, what's the role of parenting? Is like to raise a person who's conscious and capable of taking care of themselves and thriving in the world. And so, we look at the deficits that we saw growing up, noticing, again, we don't want a polarity, because a lot of times people will just parent in the complete opposite way that their parents did and create kind of mirror image issues. And so this, again, helps us to become aware of that.
I think, and then again, I'm speaking mostly from the perspective of having been a child. So I'm not a parent, but I am an expert child. I mean, I spent quite a long time being a child. Sometimes I even do it now. But like, I remember what it was like being parented by people. And so a lot of what I talk about now comes from my experiences then and what I was kind of on the receiving end of. And as I think about it, there's probably a lot of different ways to parent, a lot of different subtle nuances in how you parent your children that are acceptable, and I would say even desirable. I don't necessarily think you would want a society in which everyone was parented in exactly the same way. And so the basic things of what you were describing sound good to me, that you would do it from the more you can be in touch with the level at which everything is always okay no matter what, I think the more effective you will be as a parent. Now, their behavior interpersonally may be unacceptable, not okay. We don't want that, right? But when you can intercede there and correct or punish or whatever, whatever you want to do and whatever you want to call what you do, if there's a part of you that goes, oh, okay, it's time to convey some information about the potential consequences isn't even really a great word, but there are trade-offs, right? And one trade-off is I have a bad feeling inside, and I choose to cope with that bad feeling by slinging this block at my sister's head, right? Is that right? Is that wrong? It's a choice, and every choice has trade-offs. You can teach them about economics when you're doing this too. You can Thomas Sowell your kids through this parenting. You say, there's a trade-off. You threw the block. Now, you know what happens when you throw the block? You don't get to do something that you like to do, or you have to go and go to jail for a minute. You know what I mean? There's just something that's going to happen. And explain to the child, listen, this is the way life is. Sometimes you want to do things that are going to negatively impact other people. And sometimes you choose to do those things. But when you do, there is a trade-off associated with that, right? Now, you wanted to throw the block, and you did. And it probably felt good to throw that block in the moment. But now you're going to be, and they're probably not going to understand most of what you're saying. Some of the people watching this video aren't understanding most of what I'm saying. If all you ever do is speak at the level that the child can understand, you're not inviting the child to expand their brain and come up somewhere where they can. And I'm not saying that your children, and it's if you don't understand what I'm talking about, it's usually not because of an intellectual deficiency on your part. It's because I'm crazy. But when it comes to raising your kids, you want to constantly invite them to access new levels of understanding in the way that you speak to them. Right? You want to, and that doesn't mean that you get annoyed with them if you don't understand. When they don't understand, you're very understanding of the fact they don't understand. You go, of course you don't understand. I'm speaking to you like you're a 45-year-old above average person, and you're 7 months old. Of course you don't understand, or 3 or 4, so that there's not that frustration. They don't feel stupid. You go, I'm not speaking to what you can understand. I'm speaking to your capacity to grow and your capacity to understand, communicating to them these things. And I think the other thing too is take the pressure off yourself to be a perfect parent. You don't need to be a perfect parent. Biologically, if you needed to be a perfect parent in order to create viable people, you just would be a perfect parent naturally, right? There is a really strong case to be made that there is, some people get queasy about the word evolution, but that there is a biological or evolutionary advantage to being a little effed up as a parent, because the world is kind of an effed up place. And some people will say, well, it's just because people aren't parented perfectly. I don't think that's true. I think that there is resource scarcity, functional, if not actual. I think that there are a lot of things in life that can go wrong, and I think that a child's relationship with their parent is a training ground for dealing with reality and the fact that the ground is hard and it hurts when you fall on it, the fact that sometimes you take a risk and it doesn't work out, the fact that sometimes you do something nice for someone and they don't reciprocate, and if all you ever did was respond perfectly and lovingly to your children all of the time, they would be like the bubble boy, emotionally speaking. The moment they went out there and encountered somebody who wasn't perfectly parented, they would be shattered by it and incapable of understanding it. I look back on things that were absolutely traumatic that happened with me and my parents. And my parents were not abusive, right? But my dad's like 200 pounds and I'm like, tiny, and he gets mad and scary, or I love him a lot and respect him a lot and he seems to disapprove of me and that's emotionally devastating. I mean, those were traumatic experiences for me, right? And I look back on those things and I look back on how I experienced them in the moment, and I look back on how he probably didn't really intend to communicate that to me. And that experience is hugely valuable to me as a human being now, because I can manage my feelings when other people are hurtful to me. I can try to avoid being hurtful to other people and not feel like a complete piece of crap when I am hurtful to them, because a little bit of that hormetic emotional effect can be useful. And so it would be very selfish of you to parent your children perfectly, because you could feel great about it and they would suffer more as a result. You need a little salt in the stew. Now, that doesn't mean you got to send them down to the convenience store to get your cigarettes for you and just, if they get abducted, well, it'll be a learning experience for them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, as you go about the process of improving the niceness, the kindness, the expressions of love, the gentle corrections and things like that, you will snap. You will startle them. You will hurt their feelings. You will do things that kind of go, oh, and that's probably a part of the process. Don't think that you know better than the primal animal part of you that wants to go, listen here, you little so-and-so, you better straighten up. I mean, life sometimes will grab you by the collar. If the SWAT team is at my door and I don't answer it, they're going to knock it down. Do you know what I mean? If I ignore things about my psychological or physical health, little indications that I need to change something about what I'm doing, eventually my body will grab me by the collar and say, listen here, buddy, you're about to check out. You need to straighten up. That's going to happen. And parents, remember, the home is the template upon which the child forms their model, their understanding of reality overall. Ultimately, everything's okay. Ultimately, you're valuable. Ultimately, you're worthy. Ultimately, everything's great. But if you make the wrong choice, it's possible to get effed up. That is a healthy, emotionally sort of robust, but also practical understanding of reality. And I think one of those things is, am I willing as a parent to teach my children valuable lessons on accident and teach them valuable lessons by being imperfect? Am I, because there is this, I'm willing to be a didact and I'm willing to show them love and compassion and the good things. But am I willing to show them am I willing to teach them things? Am I willing for them to learn things about themselves and about the world that's useful for them to know through my faults and my failures and through things that I probably feel a little guilty or ashamed of or wish were different than they were? Am I willing to be the fall guy for their learning process? Am I willing for them to really gain valuable insights about what's true through experiences with me that may cause them to feel a little resentful of me or that may require me to apologize to them? Am I willing to apologize for important learnings that involve me behaving inappropriately with regard to my children? You got to have a lot of freedom to have the perspective that allows you to make sense out of doing all this stuff, but life becomes way easier once you do. So what was the question? Was it something about correcting from a place of just okayness? Yeah, I think it's that. And it's not just okayness about them, and it's not just okayness about what they're doing. It's that what they did is not acceptable, right? It's not, you can't hit people with bricks, right? You can't, whatever. What they did is not okay. It's okay that they did it. They're okay. Okay people do things that are not okay, and it's okay that those people do those things. It's okay that other people forget that it's okay that people do things that are not okay, right? And it's okay that sometimes moms are not okay with the fact that their child's doing something that's okay but not okay, right? It's interpersonally not okay, existentially, cosmically a part of development, right? And it's okay if moms raise their voice or get a little scary, right? Sometimes the best things that I say, right? And it's debatable how good those things are. But the best things that I say, I don't always say on purpose. They just come out. And a lot of the time, the examples that I give are weird and they're kind of embarrassing, kind of cringy, but they really convey an important, deep, profound, personal growth concept in a way that people have never heard it before, and helps people get it. So am I willing to be a little bit of a clown? Am I willing to be a little bit of a weirdo if that allows me to convey an idea in a way that really sticks with people. Doesn't maybe aggrandize me as a teacher, but really allows somebody to grasp it in a no bullshit, very practical, profound, and lasting way. And if I'm willing to do that, I become much more effective. And I think in the same way with a parent, let your stress, let your mistakes educate your children, and extend compassion to yourself. Take the risk that having compassion with yourself might cause you to behave worse in the future. It won't. Is
Oh, come back.
oh,
Are we back?
here we are. People thought they were off the hook.
Let us know if we're back.
Yeah. I forgot what I was talking about, so maybe it was a blessing.
Well, I guess we could wrap it here. You want to wrap
Yeah.
it here?
Any other questions? Anything else you want to hear about? Any questions about awareness school? Any life issues that you want to talk about? We'll stay here all day.
Yeah, so we're back. Thank you. Yeah, so we start a week from Tuesday, and anybody who signs up in the next 3 days, we're going to do a bonus free 30-minute coaching call with either Steve or me. So if you sign up, just send us a message. No sound though. Oh gosh. Okay, well hopefully once we end the video, the sound and everything will still be there. But yeah, we'd love for you guys to join us. How do you remember childhood memories you may have repressed? Well, certain things are repressed for a reason. If the psyche can't handle something, it does suppress it. Some memories, especially like from the GNM perspective, I hear sound now. Okay, great. There are some things that you don't necessarily want to mess with that, certain realizations you could have may not be totally resourceful. So I would just kind of trust that unfolding process, that through, meditation, that if there's something that you need to see, trust that you'll see it at the right time. Kind of doing archaeology and trying to like pull out repressed memories. Sometimes we can kind of screw with things that are better left focusing on the now and engaging resourcefully with having had the past that we've had. Sometimes seeing something and making a connection is super helpful, but again, I don't even think that's something that you can necessarily force or make happen. So I would kind of surrender and trust, again, what I need to see, I'm going to see. I'll be drawn to, therapies, hypnosis, whatever that I feel really compelled to from a place of moving towards what I want. Ooh, I feel like there's something here for me. And if I see something that unlocks a repressed memory, okay, that's great. I needed to see that, but I wouldn't worry that there's something unseen or repressed that I need to see in order to be okay.
Yeah.
That's how I would handle that.
Sometimes the repressed memory thing, I'm not saying that the concept is always wrong, but sometimes people's relationship to it is a manifestation of a more general pattern called I need what I don't have in order to get what I need. I need access to information. I need a relationship. I need resources that I do not have in order to get what I need, and because I can't get them, I'm stuck. And so I just sit here, right? And that's like a paralytic venom for your psyche, because there's nothing I can do, so I just sit here. And I don't even look for things that I could do because I've accepted the idea that what I need I don't have and can't get because it's hidden, buried, way back, way down, And I think, sometimes there is information in the past that it might be useful for you to come into contact with. But here again, think about, I don't know if you're here in the beginning when we're talking about wanting to have a relationship with your children, think of your past and think of those memories as like your child, and you really want them to talk to you, but they don't want to talk to you. Respect that and assume there's a really good reason for it, and engage really resourcefully with the present moment. What can you remember, right? What things are there that you can recall about your past? And am I dealing with those things as resourcefully as I could be? One of the things I like to do is I like to let what I need to know sneak up on me. I like to, instead of going, are you there, are you there, are you there? It's like a CB radio, and I won't let go of the button. Hello, 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 I need that memory to come back. Hello, I don't hear anything. Hello, 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 right? I'm a monologuer, as you've noticed, right? And what I do is let me lose myself in resourceful engagement with the present moment. And if I don't know how to deal with my present moment resourcefully, that's okay. Let me set the intention to engage resourcefully with it. Let me make an effort. Let me ask myself the question, what can I do with what has my attention that's more useful than what I would do if I just did by default? and let the memory come up on you, because it will come to you. If you could crack it open, it might be like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you wanted to see what was in that ark, and you opened up that thing, and your skin blows off and your eyeballs melt out, and it's not a good situation. Like you said, right? It's repressed for a reason. See these absurd examples? But if you will just lose yourself in resourceful responses to what has your attention, what you can remember, what you are doing now, what you want to do in the future, those things will come up to you and go, oh, hey, here I am. Your children often will come back to you when you stop kind of chasing after them. When you respect that memory's right to be buried if it wants to be buried. And it will very often go, geez, here it is, it's this. And sometimes you'll remember things that would have been devastating to recall had you not done the work that you did instead of trying to dig them up. You go do other things, you change who you are, and when that memory of what happened to you comes up, it's as though it happened to a different person, because it did, because you are a different person, and you remember it, and you're kind of like, it's factually interesting, because you go, wow, yeah, that, and then so much of what goes on, but it doesn't impact you in this like, oh my God, and because here's another really great thing. If I can solve the problems associated with a repressed trauma before I remember what that trauma is, when I remember what that trauma was, it's much less of a big deal. Sometimes it becomes harder for me to solve the associated issues when I know what the thing is, because it's so negatively emotionally charged. If I can become kind of the black belt jujitsu person in dealing with the present moment manifestations of the way my mind is calibrated, when that thing comes up, it's no match for me anymore, because I have already conquered the effects that it's having in my moment-to-moment, present-moment reality. So the fact that it happened to me in the past can't be that big of a deal anymore. That can be a very powerful thing. In general, it's a manifestation of that principle of, if I want more, I need to do more with what I have. Let me say to my mind, okay, mind, you're only giving me X amount of information. I'm going to just run with this and assume that you'll give me more when I'm ready, when I need it, when I'm prepared for it. And so there's this kind of just open receptivity that lets the stuff just kind of bubble up and bubble out. And you will, in my experience, as a result of watching, the past is the portal into the the present is the portal into the past. And what I mean by that is, when I'm really just engaging with the stuff that's going on in my life right here and right now, to the extent that I'm able to, I'm just trying to respond more resourcefully to just the stuff of daily life. These memories will occasionally into my mind of, like way back things. And I'll think, and it's different. It's different than a memory that just kind of pops up like in a dream or kind of random. Sometimes there is this kind of mental processing where your mind's like defragging, and as a result something pops up. This shows up on it flashes in your mind. It permeates your mind in a way that's really weird. That it's basically de-repression. That's what I think. And it just comes into your mind, and you just go, oh wow, and it's vivid, and it's just like you were there, but it's not upsetting to you. And that to me is, I'm done doing the work with that thing, and it's passing through conscious awareness on its way to wherever the unrepressed memories go. And it's a very interesting thing to watch, but you have to let them visit you. And the thing is, I want to prepare myself for a realization. I don't want to force a realization. I don't want to chase a realization. I don't want to demand a realization. I don't want to feel entitled to a realization. I want to be prepared for a realization, because a realization is an opportunity for change. And my whole thing is, if I want to draw opportunities in, I look around me right now and go, what can I do? Fold my clothes, arrange my bookshelf, get that email written, what can I do to be ready for an opportunity? What can I do to be ready for a realization? What idea could I adopt and learn about, adopt and master that would prepare me to respond resourcefully for that realization if it were to show up right now? And you'll get so that you're like, don't come out too soon, memories. Don't come out too soon, because I want another day to prepare. And very often when you stop trying to dig them up and you say, I'd love to have one more day to ready myself for those memories to emerge, then you're starting to get into the zone where you're ready for that stuff to come up.
Yes, this is a good question. I have a question. My sister insists on staying best friends with my abusive ex-husband, and I feel alienated by my whole family. Everyone blames me for not being around, like I am the problem.
Yeah. That's a tough one. There's certain things there's certain information I don't have about that situation that would make a lot of what I'd like to say about it speculative and possibly not pertain to it. What I do know for sure is that this is a situation that very much makes you justified in thinking, feeling, and doing a whole bunch of stuff that absolutely is not going to serve you. right? I'm saying it's very important to recognize that my ability to create what I want in my life and to not create what I don't want in my life is going to hinge largely upon my ability to abstain from doing things that I would be totally 100% justified in doing. Now that's just an idea just to ponder, that me creating the life I deserve depends upon my ability to refrain from thinking, feeling, doing things that my situation totally justifies my thinking, feeling, and doing. And you just meditate on that one. Don't try to change what you think, feel, or do. Just say to yourself, there's a certain quality of life, peace, happiness, joy, fulfillment, non-stress, no bullshit, no drama. It's available to me. It's my birthright. I'm entitled to it. It belongs to me. Nobody else will not have it because I do. I can have it. It's there for the taking. And a big part of my ability to create it depends upon my ability to decline invitations to do things that don't serve me, that I would be 100% saying, how could you do this? This is so unacceptable. Oh my God, I'm your sister. This is my family. Recognize that perhaps doing that doesn't serve you. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. See, we got to be very clear. I have to have full permission to do it without feeling bad about it, right? Resenting it, feeling angry, feeling estranged, feeling hurt, feeling abandoned. I have to have 100% permission to do that forever and have the ability to recognize that doing that probably doesn't serve me as well as doing something else might, even if I don't know what it is. I have to have those two kind of realizations going at one time. It's interpersonally, it's probably not right. It's probably not. I mean, that's a little messed up. I mean, I don't know you, and so I don't, maybe you were just completely 100% wild and crazy, and maybe he's a poor victim in the whole thing, and they recognize that. That seems unlikely to me, right? Just that's not usually how things shake out. But even if that were true, it's kind of a little rough and kind of a little harsh, but in my experience, family will very often seem to be your biggest impediment to happiness and freedom, when in fact, the kind of bullshit that they throw your way is your biggest opportunity to tap into and access and enjoy boundless and unconditional happiness and freedom, because you can opt out of the drama, of the resentment, of the discord. You can draw a circle around everything that they have done and everything that you have interpreted their doing as meaning about you and about them and about him and about how unfair. You can just draw a circle around all that stuff and you can go, here's a big bag of shit that my life is not going to be about. And they can think what they want and they can do what they want. And I can't really control that, right? But what I'm not going to do is make my life about what they're choosing to do and what I could make that mean and all the bad feelings that I could choose. I want my life to be about something different than that. And again, you don't have to do that. You probably couldn't do that. Like trying to do that right now would be like trying to deadlift 900 pounds if you don't work out. You're going to blow your back out, hurt yourself, and be out of the game maybe forever. But if you just think about those concepts and go through your experiences of them being the way that they are doing what they're doing, don't suppress the feeling of loneliness or resentment or anger or confusion or hurt. Let them be there. And just kind of be aware. Just be aware of it and notice it, right? And am I participating in this in some way? Do I have to feel some kind of bad feeling because I don't understand something that they're doing? Do I have to have some kind of bad feeling because they don't understand something that I'm doing? Do I need them to understand my situation in order for me to feel okay? Do I need them to understand and express understanding of my situation in order for me to feel as though my situation and my perception and experience of it is valid? If so, that's a liability that you have, without which you would be more happy and more free. So there's just a few things there, and it's not like a immediate solution, but maybe some things that hopefully useful to think about.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, when families make choices like this, it's like, is this somehow against like scripted? By, are we programmed to have some type of discord, disharmony in the family? Like, it's really interesting when I look at family patterns and who's estranged and who's talking and who's not talking, and it's almost like clockwork. There, that I saw other family members kind of go through a 15-year estrangement. It's like, oh, are we on like year 3 of our programmed 15 years of estrangement? And it's like all of these things, getting just so curious about, why people are making the choices they made and how I'm inclined to respond. And do I have any freedom here, or do I have to simply go along with what the track is prescribing? What's next in the script? This is what they did, and this is how I have to feel. Freedom is saying, oh, isn't this interesting? I get to do something different. I don't have to respond in the way that anyone else would expect. Oh, yes, I'm alone now, and my family chose this, and it's unfair. And it's like, I just feel imprisoned by that deterministic response pattern. And even just that in and of itself can lighten the load and the bitterness. And again, the justification. The more justified you feel in the bad feeling, the more the bad feeling has a hold over you. And so some part of me has to stop telling the self-justifying story and free myself from it and say, you know what, this is too fishy. This is too, scripted. This is too patterned. And I'm just not going to play that game because I'm trying to become a real person here. My priority isn't to my relationships. My priority isn't to the family. My priority is to becoming a real freaking person and to waking up to the unconscious programming and being invited to think and feel and behave in certain ways by other people.
And there's a huge difference between is how I'm feeling and how I'm acting justified, and does how I'm feeling and how I'm acting serving me. And there's no replacement for turning yourself into a person who asks sincerely the latter of the questions. And sometimes a dysfunctional organization, and a family is a kind of an organization, needs a member who becomes absolutely unwilling to do what doesn't serve her and to not do or refrain from doing what does serve her, right? And if striving after their approval, after their understanding, if condemning them, if all of those things don't serve you, and they probably don't, it's developing, and it is a cultivation, right? It is a garden of absolute refusal to do things that do not serve me. Little asterisks, unless it's my family, unless it's my sister, unless it's really this, unless it's... Eliminate the exceptions. I will not do what does not serve me. That sometimes can be the biggest contribution that you can make to that family unit, even if you never have anything to do with them again. Somebody somewhere woke up and said, no more. I will not in the name of this family. I'm not going to waste my life judging you. I'm not going to waste my life finding fault with you. I'm not going to waste my life rationalizing and justifying my bad feelings by finding fault with you, because I got to call that fault around. And fault is a heavy concept. And if I label them with it, everything I label other people with, I have to haul it around with me. And so I'm going to make my life about something different. I'm going to, and this is a strange thing, you want to cut ties with people, right? And I'm not saying that that's what you want to do, but people sometimes want to do this. Extend to them 100% permission to think, feel, and act the ways that they do. Without commentary. I'm not going to label it. I'm not going to judge it. To the extent that I'm able, I'm going to release and let go of every opinion that comes into my mind about what they're doing, what I think they're doing, what I think what they're doing constitutes or says about them, or how wrong I think it is. I'm going to let those things go. Because the freer I am, the less commentary I require about what they're doing in order to feel good and okay about what I'm doing. That's what I really wanted, because if I am trying to understand them, I'm participating in the dysfunction. If I am justifying their behavior by finding fault with myself, must be something wrong with me, I'm participating in the dysfunction. If I am invalidating what they're doing, right, by constantly reviewing in my head how unfair and how unkind it is, I'm making my life about it, I'm participating in that dysfunction. We think sometimes because we're not talking to these people that we're not involved with them. Psychic involvement, mental involvement, emotional involvement is the most important kind of involvement there is. And so this whole situation to me sounds like an opportunity and an invitation to you to be unreasonably resourceful. And I don't know that a human being can come fully into their power and into their freedom without having to sort of take up the cross of absolutely, what I'm asking you to do is not reasonable. I mean, human beings are social creatures. You have a family here. You had, I imagine, an acrimonious fallout with your ex. That's bad enough. Then you got your family who are siding with him and choosing to maintain a friendly relationship with him, seeming to disregard you, to invalidate you, to go, I don't believe what you're saying, and if I do believe what you're saying, I don't care enough about you to modify my behavior. You don't matter. You don't count. We like him. Go to hell. Those are all the things that seem to be being communicated, right? And so it's not fair for me to ask a woman in a situation like that to become unreasonably resourceful in how she thinks about that situation. And yet, unreasonably resourceful responses to that are going to crack open this amazing capacity for personal freedom. You're going to wake up one day and you're going to go, oh my God, I don't have to feel bad about myself. I don't have to feel bad about them. I get to make my life about whatever I want it to be about. My experience gets to be about something different. And one of the big things, you don't have to change how you feel about this situation. You can just change the situation you're feeling about. You can go that's what making your life about something different. That's what that really is. It's not, this person who abused me all these years, now instead of hating them, I love them. A lot of the time that's phony. A lot of the time people are convincing themselves they don't really feel that way. I can really change the quality of my life by changing the situations from which I am deriving my emotional sensations, making my life about a different subject.
Yes. Okay, let us wrap it here, because this has been a really fun conversation. And this is kind of how it goes. This is what Awareness School is like. You come to class and we talk about the concepts that we went over or that were covered in that module of the class, and we just kind of jam, and people have questions and they bring their life stuff, and we give resourceful, based on the content that you're learning in Awareness School, how to unravel your stuff, how to feel better more of the time, how to interact in resourceful ways with whatever has your attention. So like I mentioned, we start a week from Tuesday. If you sign up in the next 3 days, we're doing a bonus 30-minute one-on-one coaching call with either Steve or me. You could just message us after you sign up and we can get that scheduled. And yeah, any questions that you have, we'll be over the next 10 days until class starts. We'll probably go live again, or I'll go live to answer there were some kind of like GNME questions that we'll answer in another video. But yeah, it's lunchtime, so have a wonderful rest of your Saturday, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. See you.